All right. Hello, and welcome back to another fun-filled episode of the Hammercast. I am your host, Alex, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin, and joining me today is Mark Rosenberg, also known more commonly on Instagram as at Deadliest Lift. He is a hoot to watch because he lifts unreal amounts of weights, makes it look easy, and he also has a lot of very interesting approaches to some of the movements that he does, so much so that he has a tendency to get a lot of, we'll say, haters and doubters in the comment section, which he very deftly deals with. And we're going to talk in particular about his unconventional approach to training and how we can start adding some more unconventional lifts to our own workouts. And so before we begin, I want to make sure that I remind my listeners, if this is your first time listening or 50th or whatever, if you've not already gotten my free 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge, I highly recommend that you do that. Speaking of unconventional type of stuff, it's based around movements that you can learn in like 30 seconds or less, and it's designed to be done in conjunction with your regular training, not in place of it. So all you got to do is tack it on at the beginning, tack it on at the end, put it on your in between days, and you're good to go. So if you want to grab your own free copy, just go to 9minutechallenge.com and it is yours. That is the number 9minutechallenge.com. So without further ado, Mark, welcome to the show.
I'd be here.
I got to say, I've been following you for a long time. I particularly, I think social media is best for, there's an educational element. I always feel like I learned
Mhm.
something from your posts, but there's an even greater like entertainment value, particularly with watching the way that you deal with some of the people who just like, they're gobsmacked at the idea that you might lift with your back rounded, or that, let's say, you stand on two upturned, barbell plates while you lift more than what most people could do in a week. Um, so I'm first of all, I'm curious, like, did that kind of like bother you at the beginning when you started putting this stuff out of like your kind of unconventional training, and you just all the losers and redditors and other whiners just descended on your posts and started complaining, or did you just find it as funny as everybody else seems to?
Well, I have a background in Reddit, so I've been
Oh, okay.
exposed
Well,
to it. Yeah, that's actually kind of almost what got started me. I started making videos not for posting anyway. Started posting because Mikey, maybe me, who everyone probably knows now is the badminton guy, had a competition 2.5 years ago now for just unconventional lifts. And I'm like, that's my thing. I was just gonna post it and be done and not use Instagram again, but they got enough positive feedback. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll keep doing it, and then just kind of grew from there. But the reason I started doing kind of unconventional lifts and making videos is because I would read comments on Reddit saying you can't do X, Y, and Z because it's dangerous, and I'm like, well, of course you can. And my reasoning was a video is the best counter argument you can. Put your money where your mouth is.
mhm.
So I would just do the lifts that they're claiming are dangerous and then post them as a response, and that'd be my argument. It doesn't really resonate with Reddit people because they're not. Uh,
They're not
well,
serious
they're not. They're
commentators,
not
as
really
you say.
people. Also, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't a good argument because they're not really capable of arguing with those kind of people. But it was fun, and it's kind of gave me a little library of stuff to use for that competition, and kind of got me started on this path of a little bit of entertainment, a little bit of shock value, a little bit of hopefully a lesson in there somewhere. So.
Definitely. I think in particular, it seems like you're especially good at deadlift related feats. I've seen you do some pretty crazy stuff with the
Mhm.
squat as well, like squatting multiple barbells or, God only knows what else. Um, did you start when you kind of started getting uh, this this feedback, both positive and negative? Did it kind of draw you to be like, okay, well, let's see how many other crazy things that I can do, and let's just see what happens. Like I'll give them a shot. If they work, they work. If they don't, they
Mhm.
don't. Was that kind of like your mindset? And in particular, I'm curious how you come up with some of these ideas, because most of them I see and it would just never occur to me like to do any of them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff is just like, well, we'll try. So every once in a while, I'll have a day where I have an idea that I'm pretty sure will work, and then it turns out the physics they don't work. I mean, there's some lifts that just aren't feasible to do with anything even resembling reasonable weight, and I'm like, yes, I could probably do this thing I'm trying to do, but if I'm only doing it with like 150 pounds, that just does not feel worth it to me unless
Yeah.
it's something that makes sense for that amount of weight. But like some kind of weird deadlift I want to do with 150 pounds, which is not many of them. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna toss this idea. But most things can eventually be worked out. Some things I can do a lot more than I thought. Some things turn out being harder than I thought, which is always kind of a fun little lesson to be surprised either way. The only reason I have so many deadlifts is just because I am that much stronger at deadlifting than I am at any other kind of movement pattern. So all of my like heavy odd lifts are obviously much lighter than my more normal versions, unless
Mhm.
there's something like a really low range of motion. So they are harder, but people don't seem to necessarily realize that because for me, a like 60% lift is still, as you can tell, a really heavy weight for most people. So they're thinking that I can do like my max at these crazy variations. And I think that does kind of help with the shock value and the impression that I'm the strongest man ever, which I have heard that before, which is like, I'm complimented, but you're probably not right there.
Yeah, not yet, not yet. I think you're well on your
Not
way.
yet.
Well, here's a question on that topic. So, one of the things I saw you do just, I think it was just maybe yesterday, a Reeves
Hmm.
deadlift, which I
Yep, with the plate
rarely,
handles. Yep.
you never, almost never see anybody try Reeves deadlifts
Hmm.
anymore. So, I thought that was very cool. And you did it. It looked like with a pretty decent amount of weight. What was it like, 500
Yeah,
pounds?
that 500 and 540. So
Jeez.
that was 540 with using the deep dish rims, not actual grip plates, which I've done both variations. I've
Yeah.
even tried like pinching non-deep dish plates before. I don't do that one very often because that's just kind of like a strict pinch strength test, and I'm not really like a grip expert, like at least not in the niche grips. I have a pretty strong, general grip just from all the lifting, but
Hmm.
I have the very niche lift variations, not so much. So the deep dish one that is ultimately limited by grip. When you get like a plate handle grip, that is usually ends up being strength. But
Hmm.
as far as I know, the deep dish one, I think that is the current highest Reeves deadlifts ever with deep dishes. And again, to the best of my knowledge, when you have a grip plate, I also have the highest deadlift like that. So that's 540 for the deep dish and 705 for plates with handles. So again, not many people competing for this, so it's not the craziest world record ever, but it's still nice. I have a couple of niche deadlift variation world records like that are it's always fun to do. Always fun to push those lifts to places that most people don't.
Absolutely. Do you find that these variations have a nice carryover into, let's say, like more conventional deadlifting variations? I'm not sure if you pull sumo or conventional.
I pull everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I should have
I'm
guessed.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm worse at sumo. I don't powerlift. The only competitive stance I can use is conventional strongman. But in order of, I'd say this kind of like general strength for at least one rep max, I'm actually the strongest and Jefferson, so straddling the bar, followed by conventional, followed by hack, which is bar behind the legs, followed by sumo. My sumo is just not good. It's basically conventional with a wide stance, which is just ugly and not convenient, but
Yeah.
I can muscle up at
Absolutely.
least 9 plates. So that's something.
So, and what is that? About 800 pounds?
That's 855 is 9 plates. Yeah.
855.
So I've
That's
done all four stances with at least 855, which I
that's
thought was a
incredible.
cool achievement.
That is really incredible. I think it's worth mentioning too. I'm sure this will make the Redditors seethe, but Arnold Schwarzenegger shared one of your videos of you doing
Yep.
some like crazy. So what was it again? I think if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was like you had those two kind of like it was like bumper plate
Yep. I
45s.
had 55, so they're a little bit thicker, but 55 bumper plates. I had those standing on their sides. I'm balancing on them, trying not to let them roll. And then I was deadlifting. You can kind of see it in there. The cambered squat bar, which
Ah,
I
yes.
got that. And it was my favorite squat bar for a while. It still is a really good squat bar. I've since moved on to the Elite FTS Spider bar. But now it's doing double duty. It's a very kind of unique bar. You can do a lot of kind of cool looking lifts like that. So I've done a lot of lifts that have gotten a lot of good feedback with that bar just because that giant camber gives some weird opportunities.
That's awesome. I I've always wondered what those bars would be good for, but given what you were just talking about, that seems
Mm-hmm.
like the ideal
Oh yeah,
thing. If you want to
it's
do
a
like,
squat bar.
yeah, exactly, like extreme range of motion, that's the perfect way to do it because otherwise you're not getting a whole lot of extra ROM just
Mm-hmm.
from like a standard straight bar. Uh, now
Yeah.
I'm curious too regarding Schwarzenegger because I'm just always like ever since I was a kid and I saw Terminator 2, like Schwarzenegger's been, the man in my mind. Did he reach out to you from this or was this just
Oh no, that was just I just got I the mention the whatever they add in the description didn't even get processed by Instagram. Instagram misses a lot of those for some reason. I
really?
actually just got a bunch of random DMs with people like, "Hey, you're on Arnold's page." I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty neat." I mean,
That
I like to believe that he's posting. I mean, it's very possible it's just a media manager, like, but I like to believe that Arnold was just looking through videos and he saw it and he's like, I want to show everyone this one."
exactly. There's no proof that he didn't
There's
that
no
he
proof they
wasn't
didn't,
at the
right?
helm. So we're gonna count it. We're gonna count
But
it.
that comment section was terrible. Honestly, the bigger like the audience and like the larger the page that reposted the worse the comments get because the Gen Pop just doesn't really get these things. And I mean, I
Yeah.
get why they don't, but it's always kind of what bugs me more is not their negative reaction because I understand that. It's that so many people I feel like they should realize that they're out of their depth and they don't. Like when there's something that I'm not an expert on, which is like 99.9% of things in the world, being an expert in other things, I can understand my lack of knowledge and take a step back and stay in my lane, or at least if I start leave my lane, I feel bad about it. And I catch myself. Lots of people online don't do that, and I just kind of wonder if they're just not good at anything, so they don't have a frame of reference for what it feels like to actually know things. But it's
That's
really them. It's like, how are you so confident when
that's
you're
highly
so clearly
probable.
out of
I,
your depth?
I think you nailed it. You know, the other thing is that like, well, there was a time in which I didn't know much of anything,
Hmm.
you know, about training. We've all been there, and I remember this was, I guess, pre-obsession with social media and society.
Hmm.
And I remember so one of the things I remember being told like by some trainer at my university was you want to squat with your toes straight forward. And I had like these chicken legs, so clearly I'd never squatted before. I was like, okay, you know, write it in the notebook.
Hmm.
And then I saw somebody demonstrating a squat with the toes kind of pointed outward, and I was like, I thought that was wrong. And then I was like, well, this guy actually power lifted, so maybe I should
Yeah,
just keep quiet for right now. You know, I agree
that's
that
the
it's
reasonable reaction to this, but a
yeah,
lot of people don't have
exactly.
that reaction.
No, they don't. Well, at a minimum, look, it's like, yeah, what you're doing is completely crazy, and you're not
Hmm.
telling other people. You're not like, hey,
Oh
you've
yeah.
never lifted before? Please stand on a pair of 25s or 55s as you deadlift a Cambridge bar with 500 pounds. But yeah, it's crazy that people like, of course it's a risk. You know, that's the point. You're doing stuff that's like over the top and
Hmm.
you're having a good time doing it. And I think the real problem is that people have a difficulty like separating between uh people who know that they are taking a measured risk but
Hmm.
clearly have the capacity to do it versus some like blanket recommendation for everybody else to be doing. It's
Yeah.
like people don't even like the lines aren't even blurred. It's like there's no line. Like
Yeah.
there's just no capacity
I,
to
I
like.
I would like to think that these things are very clearly not training recommendations. Like at no point, like I mean, whenever I write, like I very explicitly say, like, hey, these lifts are just fun. They're not even like I'm not benefiting from them. They're not my training. They're just an expression of all the strength and skill I've developed with real training. Like I try to hammer that in every time I talk about them.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of my lifts, like the risk I can see, like at first glance, it looks higher, but like those plates, so to go back to the example of staying on the plates, if they fall, they're not just like randomly rolling forward and like flopping me back.
yeah,
They tip side to side. That's what they do. So they tip over and you fall 18 inches.
mm-hmm.
And it's not like they just randomly fall like instantaneously. You feel yourself losing balance, you prep for it, and you fall a foot and a half, which I
Mm-hmm.
think most people could agree, like falling off a foot and a half step, or it's like jumping down a foot and a half, is not a risky behavior
Yeah,
unless it's completely like let's say like slip on ice and you're not expecting it all. But that's the thing. My entire body is engaged when I'm trying to balance on these things. Like I'm very focused
mm-hmm.
on my body like reacting to a potential fall. And
Yep.
I think that just kind of escapes people. They think that it's just like the same as, falling off a ledge or something when in reality, like it's the complete opposite. And I am as prepared for falling as I possibly could be because I realize that I'm standing on a not so stable surface.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other lifts like that. There's the risk is pretty much mitigated. There's a few lifts where I'm like, there's a capability for this to go wrong, but those ones I tend to keep really light. Like once they start getting even a little bit difficult, I'm like, okay, if that still looks like a good enough weight for a video, I'm calling it there.
Yeah. I think I have to mention this one in particular. I think this was one I found most impressive, and it wasn't more than anything. It had to do with the surface that you were lying on. And this was
Mm-hmm.
your you
What's
probably know
up,
what I'm going to say, the fire
the fire
hydrant.
hydrant?
What did you incline press 285 with
It's only 255.
oh, never mind.
Yeah, only
um
255.
yeah, it
Again,
reminded me of
oh my
that
god,
episode. I don't know if you're a big
it's
yeah,
right
there we go,
there.
right there. And this
Yeah.
is from Rogue. So anybody who wants
Hmm.
to get
Oh
one
yeah,
of his
no,
videos.
Rouge. You
Rouge.
can't
Okay.
have copyright infringement.
Right. Well,
It's a
you're in
Rouge
Wisconsin.
fire hydrant.
Yeah, Rouge fire hydrant. You're in Wisconsin. You know, there's a fair amount of French out there. You know, there's like
Hmm.
lacrosse, there's fond du lac,
Yeah,
whatever. So yes,
it's all
Rouge.
French, native, or German.
Exactly, exactly. It reminded me of this episode of The Simpsons where Homer falls over the. Did you ever watch The Simpsons? You seen this
A little
episode?
bit. Yeah,
Okay,
I think I might have.
I was just impressed because it was like you think like that knobby thing on the end of a fire hydrant would be horribly painful, but you managed to.
Oh, it's not very comfortable, but
But 255, man, that's
yeah.
amazing.
But to me, like to go back to like things like people see that and they think that the risk is the knobby, maybe like at most like an inch and a half square surface area that all your pressure on. They're like, oh, it's gonna like push your discs out. Well, one, there's muscle in the way. Two, I'm a little bit off centered, so it's on like one lat versus the muscle.
Yeah,
And two, what ultimately made me stop there because it was very uncomfortable, like as I got ready to back, but like once all the pressure is there and it's not like building, the actual rep was not very uncomfortable, weirdly enough. But again, to go back to like the behind the scenes that people don't realize, which I don't blame them because it's kind of not intuitive. What I was most concerned about with that lift was the fact that that fire hydrant's not affixed to the ground. It's only got maybe that big of a surface area and it's like a ring. So when you start getting a heavy bench, your natural inclination is to use leg drive and push back into the bench because that's how you bench good.
Yeah.
And if I started using leg drive, I was going to push that fire hydrant back and I was going to fall down and I was going to fall at force with 255 onto the other pointy bit of the part where the hose goes on. And that was concerning to me. So once I started feeling some tipping from like leg drive, I'm like, okay, this is where we cancel it. Not because I'm afraid of my spine, not because it's painful, but because I don't want to tip a fire hydrant and fall onto it. Because with that extra momentum, that probably would be dangerous.
Yeah, you don't
So
have to
again,
worry so
it's like
much.
that with like all these lifts.
Yeah, it's not so much the height that you fall in a
Mm-hmm.
case like that. It's like what you're going to be falling on
Yeah.
from
So
that
you're
height.
falling on the fact that like I can't like brace if I'm falling actively. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm gonna feel a tip, but at the same time, like I can't do anything about that. My hands are occupied with bar. I'm just gonna fall straight onto my back, and that would be probably not good. So I canceled there. I probably could have kept pushing more strength wise. I could have kept pushing more back, you know, comfort wise.
sure,
I did not want to keep pressing more with the stability of that fire. If I could have fixed this to the floor somehow, I probably would have gone heavier. But
sure.
again, there is some rationale here. I'm not just recklessly endangering my life every time. I'm thinking a little bit.
Exactly. This is all for our entertainment too. This is what
Mm-hmm.
people should be really thankful for and not whining in your comment section about, oh, this is dangerous, what have you. Now, you mentioned that most of your training is relatively conventional,
Mm-hmm.
if I understood correctly. But you also do have a bit of, we'll say, like competence with, in addition to, some of the stuff you're doing for show for
Yeah.
Instagram. But you have a fair bit of competence with unconventional type of training.
Yeah.
And in particular, one of the things that I find really, I, I think more important than most people would have given it credit for, even 5, 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
is exercise selection that people need to actually make any sort of improvement in their body toward their goals. Alexander Juan Antonio Cortez, he's or Ajax as he's known,
Mm-hmm.
pointed this out. He said one thing that the optimization bros deserve credit on is giving people permission to not do bench, squat, and deadlift to the exclusion of everything else, because it's
Mm-hmm.
it's not it's not perfect for everybody. There are some people who can do some or all of them. Other people just are better off doing different movements. And I think the unconventional training approach is very similar in that regard, because there are movements that some people think, well, I shouldn't do, because I'm not supposed to
Mm-hmm.
bend my back when I lift, or this, that, or the other thing is not ideal. So what is the potential role that unconventional training can play in other people's lives, apart from just what would look good on Instagram, but in terms of helping people to achieve their, let's say, their physique goals or their strength training goals?
Mm-hmm.
um, how might somebody get started training a little bit more unconventionally?
Well, the thing is, like, I don't like. I'm very movement agnostic, and almost I don't think there are even really good or better movements. One, it's individual preference. Two, it's going to be goal. Like, obviously, if you train for competition, you need to practice those things. But I think the bigger thing is not choosing and focusing on unconventional lifts. It's taking just a less kind of specialized general intent towards your training, and then also just being like aware that you can travel outside these kind of arbitrary lines of safety that people have spewed out online over years and years and years. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell someone, oh, you should do a Jefferson deadlift or you should do this weird variation. I'm just going to say, hey, don't hyper specialize on like your competition squat, or don't hyper specialize on one type of deadlift. Like you can do whatever variation you want. You can just do a slightly different form. Just don't train it the same way every time. Like have some variation in there, whatever that variation is. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you hyper specialize, you get really good at one thing, and then you're really bad at literally everything else. So you need just some variety of whatever that variety is. Like I'm not going to say what a better movement is, just do something different. Even if it means just lifting a little bit differently. Also, don't fixate on one form. Like if you feel your back start to bend a little bit, and even your regular deadlifts, like as long as it's not causing an issue, embrace that a little bit, because most people should be bending their back in deadlift at least a little bit.
Yeah.
And some people can bend their back a lot and be just fine. I mean, the first guy to lift 5 times his body weight was Lamar Dan. He was bent fully over and he had scoliosis. He was all screwed up and he was
Yeah.
just fine.
Yeah, I think even
So
now he's like, he,
yeah,
his back never exploded. He's in his like late 50s.
that's like 99.99% of these heavy lifters. I mean, one comment I get a lot, go back to the comments, is I bet you can guess who they talk about. 3 guesses. Which lifter do they reference in regard to my stuff?
Ronnie Coleman.
Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah.
And every time I say, well, what about Ronnie Coleman? I'm like, okay, great. Name a second one. Name literally one other strength athlete or bodybuilder, any person who lifted a lot, who is currently in Ronnie's state.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I could, but I'm not going to. Or they just don't respond because they don't have that person. They know one person. And in my mind, if you can only come up with one person out of the literal hundreds of thousands of heavy lifters over the last however many decades, I think that's a pretty good sign that the chances of like permanently crippling yourself via lifting is pretty low.
Yeah. Well, particularly because in Ronnie's case, it wasn't the lifting
Oh
that
yeah,
held
it
him in.
wasn't even the lifting. It was a botched back surgery and issues he had from a football accident point. Like there's lots of other circumstances there, which people don't know because they don't actually know anything about Ronnie. They just know that he hurt his back. That's all
Yeah.
they know. That's the full extent of their information on Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's like people get injured doing all sorts of stuff. I mean, like people play soccer and they tear their ACLs.
Oh yeah, and people just don't do anything and they fall apart because their body gets weak.
Yeah, it's
Like,
like,
oh, look at all these lifters with knee surgeries. Well, look at all the regular people with knee surgeries too. Like old people get knee surgery. It happens.
yeah,
Like unless you can show me that the incidence is higher in lifters, I'm not concerned.
exactly. Yeah, I think this is the issue is it's like people are understandably worried about it getting injured because everybody's gotten
Mm-hmm.
hurt doing something dumb and they don't want to take a ton of time off and God only knows they don't want to have to deal with like surgery if things
Mm-hmm.
go really awry. But a lot of that also has to do with just how how present and aware are you while you're training? Like
Mm-hmm.
are you training in the same way that you would walk on a treadmill at a gym where you're just zoned out and you're watching CNN or whatever they put on
Mm-hmm.
the on the gym TVs? Or are you actually making an attempt to get better, to get stronger, listening to your body? All of
Yep.
these are things that apply not just to lifting, but again, it's like if you're playing a game of pickup basketball, you're playing football, hide and seek with your kids, like any sort of physical activity has a sort of risk involved with it. And it is by doing those things and getting stronger at them that you make yourself more,
Mm-hmm.
that you mitigate the likelihood that you're going to end up getting seriously injured. And I
Yeah.
think similar to what you just pointed out too, this is, I think the biggest takeaway for anybody should be, don't just do the things that you really like to do. In the case of lifting, like I'm going to squat the exact same way
Mm-hmm.
every single time. It's like I've heard a good analogy from my friend Cliff Harsky, who's been on the show in the past. Like if you bend a credit card back and forth the exact same place over and
Mm-hmm.
over and over again, eventually it's going to start getting weak in the place where it gets bent over and over. But if you're constantly changing the way that you're bending it and manipulating it, it's no worse for the wear, and the body's very very much the same. So
Yep.
if you're constantly doing the same thing over and over and over again, that's where you get these overuse issues. That's where I think probably
Mm-hmm.
most people have injuries with their lifting. And ironically, it's probably doing the stuff like you, where you're at weird angles and doing stuff
Yep.
that people aren't used to, that you're
Because it's
probably more
spreading out
resilient.
the impact. Well, it seems that's a couple of things. There's a couple of things you mentioned in the last that I want to touch on. One, like you said, listen to your body. I think that is most people don't listen to their body. They listen to form advice and they try to pigeonhole themselves into one form because it's the right form. That's not efficient for lifting. That's not even good for injury prevention. Like you should be figuring like, hey, if your body wants to bend a little bit, and that's what feels strongest. Like when I tell people to like, what's my torso look like when I'm deadlifting? I'm like, well, make this. What position feels strongest? Like what amount of bend or what configuration for your back makes it feel like it's the most solid?
Mm-hmm.
To do that. Don't force yourself to be straight. Don't like hyperextend your lower back. Like those are both not good. Is either inefficient or worse. It's gonna probably increase your likelihood of back injury.
Mm-hmm.
You just gotta get, all right, you feel most locked in like this, great. You feel most locked in like that, great. Like just your body knows what it wants to do to not hurt itself. You should listen to it a bit more and maybe not watch your YouTube videos so much.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. Two, if you do a wide variety of lifts, you're going to kind of naturally develop a general bodily awareness, which is one thing that I have. Like most of these weird lifts I do, I don't train them. I don't like practice them to get better. I don't even like work up to what I'm doing. The full extent of my work up to a weird lift is maybe deciding, oh, at 315 will feel kind of easy. I start there and just do it until I can't do it anymore. And that's the full thing. I don't need to practice it. I don't need to do like weeks and weeks of practice because I have a pretty good idea of how to move my body in a way that is both efficient and safe. And I've developed that by doing lots and lots of different lifts, lots and lots of really heavy lifts, and just generally listening to my body versus trying to make myself do some idealized form I saw in a video or was told by a coach. And then another thing is, like you said, most injuries are not because you did one weird hard lift too heavy. They are predominantly going to be chronic overuse injuries. Yes, you can have a acute overuse injuries, load up way too much, you just blew something out. That happens. But even then, that's probably because you weaken the area with some chronic overuse injuries. Like whenever I get injured, 9 times out of 10, it's because I've been hammering one area too hard, too long. And I can feel it getting worse, but there's a little bit of a, have to kind of, if you stop going hard every time you get a little bit of discomfort, you're probably not getting anything worse. So it's a bit of an art figuring out what's the right amount of pushing versus too much.
Yeah.
But when you just overuse the same area because all you're doing is your competition bench squat dead the same way every time, every muscle's only getting used the same way. Every joint's only getting used the same way. That's a lot of fatigue in one way, as opposed to spreading out the wealth a little bit and
Oh,
giving
yeah.
other things the time to recover and strengthen up before you use them again. So that's another benefit to kind of varying your training a little bit, whether it be via odd lifts or just using a wide variety of normal lifts.
Yeah. And as far as I can tell anyway, it seems more kind of like a recent phenomenon where people don't want to do a wider array of movements because, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not really big. I like training with the barbell. I just don't do it with any real frequency. Train
Mm-hmm.
mostly with, kettlebells and calisthenics and but even then, I try to keep things as varied as possible because number one, it's more fun and it's more interesting. And number two, if you're really good at like one thing, same thing, whether it doesn't matter what the
Mm-hmm.
implement is, and then you go slightly outside of that, that ideal angle, and you're just completely
Yep.
useless. Like
You
stretching
now
that,
you no longer know what you're doing. Your body becomes confused. If you're only ever trained with a straight back, the second you get a little bit of bend, your body doesn't know what to do, and it just keeps bending. You hurt yourself. If you're used to a range of bending, then you can adapt to that new situation more easily.
exactly. And I look at some of the training programs of like let's say the power lifters in the 70s and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And it was like they were doing boatloads of bodybuilding. They were doing boatloads of
Mm-hmm.
variations on their competition lifts, and it was really only the couple weeks leading up to
Yep.
their actual
The prep
competition.
phase.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like if you're not actually going to compete, it makes more sense to train like they did
Mm-hmm.
in the prep phase leading up to the peaking phase, that
Yeah.
last little bit. But for whatever reason, I think it's like people seem to feel like, oh, I want to train like a power lifter. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like if you okay, but most of the people showing up to these powerlifting meets, if they're serious powerlifters, maybe they're not training like that. But otherwise, you see, people showing up and they're lifting weights that, like you said, you wouldn't put on Instagram because they're not heavy enough. So like you're like, oh, I wouldn't, even if I could
Mm-hmm.
do it, if the weight's not heavy enough, I'm not going to bother with it. And I think a part of that is because they don't do that preparatory stuff. It's like they're only training as though tomorrow is the competition,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't
You need
have
to
a
build the
ton of
foundation where you can build your tower.
exactly, exactly. Now, do you use any other implements? I mean, I know you're a barbell aficionado. Do you train? Do
Mm-hmm.
you have like dumbbells and sandbags or anything else like that?
I also I compete in strongman, so I'm kind of forced to use a wide variety of implements.
Right.
Sometimes I begrudgingly, there's some implements I just hate. But most of my work is like at home. Like I said, my focus on like strength. Most of my strength expression is through barbells, just because I like barbells. I find like they're a good measurement. I think that most people can understand a barbell lift, and it looks impressive. It's a lot of weight. It's cool. Um, but a lot of my like training, like I will do all my strength stuff and some of my other stuff here at home because I like to have my equipment for the heavy lifts, and then but then I also go to a commercial gym, a really good commercial gym, because a lot of my like side work, my accessory work, my hypertrophy work is a lot of machines and dumbbells and stuff. And I actually prefer those for that purpose because that's kind of what designs machines are designed to do. I mean, some people kind of like decide, oh, machines, poo poo, like, they're not real strength training. And I never understood that because if you're just constantly cranking out free weights, that's a lot more stress again on certain areas over and over again that you can't control. Machines are designed to kind of target one area to the exclusion of others. And sometimes that's what you want. Like maybe you shouldn't do all your training on machines, but they're a good way to supplement your free weight exercises or your barbell exercises or stuff. So I try to incorporate a wide variety of different types of training tips, different types of implements. Not sandbags. I hate sandbags. I've dodged sandbag competitions up to this point. At some point, I'll be forced to confront sandbags, but I'm not going to seek them up before that.
I've done almost nothing with them either. I like periodically they're fun to lift
No,
and play
they're
with.
just obnoxious. Yeah, everyone told the strongman gym I'll like just do some like sandbag to shoulder just to see what I can do without practice, but I hate them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the other thing too is that, realistically speaking, you can get strong with pretty much anything. Sandbag, huge rock, but it's
Yeah,
nice to
big
actually,
rock.
yeah, exactly. But it's nice to
Yeah.
have something that you can actually like measure and
Mm-hmm.
repeat and all this other stuff. And I think sandbag, just because the weight is inherently variable, like if it
Mm-hmm.
tilts to
It's
one
shifting
side
always.
versus
Yep.
another, yeah, it changes the whole entire thing. So, uh, if for no other reason that it's like annoyingly variable, I think there's a perfectly good
Mm-hmm.
rationale to just completely avoid them. As long as you possibly can. Like you said, eventually you're gonna have to pay the piper. But
Mm-hmm.
for now,
But she'll be in a competition. But I'll prep for him with the next. I mean, the strength is there. Everything transfers. It's just a matter of kind of developing a technique, and that's a big kind of my thought process is that if I really want to get good at something, I will eventually focus on it. But strength is strength. Like you build general strength and you can turn it into whatever you want later down the road, as
Mhm.
long as it's even remotely applicable. And yes, some lifts are probably more skill based than others. Like I'm a very, very weak overhead presser. Part of that's just my natural proclivity. As much as I'm strong in deadlift, I am weak in overhead. But also part of that is I don't train it that often because I don't like it, because I'm weak at it. And that's kind of a self reinforcing circle.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
eventually, as you'll try and train before competition, and ideally, at least scrape by in the press event. Uh, but yeah, if I had properly trained any kind of press all year round, I'm sure by the time I got to a specific press for competition, like log press, axle press, whatever press, I'd be in a much better place. But again, I am a little bit guilty of just doing what I like, which in most cases is what I'm good at. So, you know, get stronger at deadlift, even weaker at press, but it works out for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I also wanted to talk about something that we talked about
Mhm.
earlier because it is salient. And of course, people are always curious about it, particularly because you like to do all these, off the wall
Mhm.
lifts. When you do encounter an injury, like I remember maybe it was like last year, I think you were doing some sort of I don't remember what it was. It
Yep.
was a squat
Hatfield squat.
position. Yeah. And
Yep, where you hold on to the up to the uprights of the rack, or your handles on the rack, or something like that.
that's
Yeah,
right. And you hurt your shoulder, but it
I
seems like,
dislocated it.
right. But it seems like
I just
everything's
yanked it right
okay.
up.
Yeah. Like,
Oh yeah, everything's. I mean, not a big deal. Like it was been knowing at the time, it was obviously a pure run. Like I'd never experienced an injury of that magnitude before, and even then, on the scale of lifting nerve injuries, I say a dislocation is middle high. I mean, it's not like I fucking just tore a muscle off.
yeah.
But yeah, there's a little bit of like, I mean, there's obviously a period of like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Like, is this going to be a constant issue? So there's dealing with that, but uh, really, I think that with any injury, and obviously I've had a variety of injuries of lower severity, like that's if you lift, you're going to get injured. It's not a matter of avoiding injury, it's when. And so you're better off learning how to deal with injury rather than desperately trying to avoid it, because it's going to happen at some point, regardless of what you do. Like that's just inevitable.
Yeah.
So my approach to that injury and my approach to every other injury is one, don't catastrophize. That is the number one thing to do. Like the very first thing to do is decide, like, no, this is not a huge issue. Because if you say it's a huge issue, it's going to become a huge issue, and it's going to affect your mindset, which is going to affect your training, which is going to affect your recovery, which is going to just, it's a downward spiral that you're not going to win. So you
Mhm.
need to know right from the outset, like, this is not the end. This is not that big a deal. It can be a big deal, but it's not the big deal. So
Mhm.
with this dislocated shoulder, I couldn't do much with it. They told me to keep it in a sling for 6 weeks, and that lasted about 2 days. I don't necessarily think that the general advice for recovering from like physical injuries like that are the best, but that's a totally different topic. So my like thought process was, okay, well, I'm just gonna. They want to keep immobilized. I generally think that pain is all I really need to know what is too much for recovering from an injury.
Mhm.
And there's a bit of nuance in distinguishing pain from discomfort. That's something everyone needs to learn. If you're kind of newer to injuries, you should probably err on the conservative side and assume that something you're not sure of is actually pain. But like couple first days, like even just trying to reach up past parallel, like reach something myself, like pull down a can. If I could do that after 3 days and it was a little more comfortable each time, I could reach a little bit higher. That's progress. That's recovery. And I know that like damage is done. I could sit here and be upset about it, or I can just keep working out, which I did. I trained this arm as strong as I could. I trained my legs as strong as I could. I did whatever it could with this arm. And that resulted in I think literally 72-ish hours after I dislocated. So I think I took 1 day totally off lifting. I had 1 day of this very, very light stuff to kind of gauge how everything was feeling. And
Mhm.
then the third day, I set a powerlifting total. So bench, squat, deadlift using only one arm. And that was like 1,100 pounds. So that was, I kind of like, that's how I like, one, I thought it'd be a fun video. And two, I just needed to do something like, this is my proof that I am still going to keep training. I'm not going to sit here and do nothing for 6 weeks or whatever until I see a therapist and they do x-rays or I guess MRIs and tell me how bad it is. I'm going to train something. Even if it's not as good as I normally could be, I'm going to do something. And that's what I did. I kept training the one side, I trained my legs, I trained as strong as I could. Within, oh God, 3-ish weeks, I was bench pressing over 200 pounds again. Like obviously being very careful, very steady, like very controlled, like really being careful in the movement, like really sensing it out. I was deadlifting over 700 in the same time frame. I was doing all kinds of things because I didn't sit there and let it kind of be injured.
Yeah.
I forced it to move. I kept everything loose. I kept everything stretched out. I didn't let all the muscles there atrophy, because that's only going to make everything worse. Like I found it later on. The only thing that was really damaged in there, obviously, a bunch of stuff was really tender because I fucking extended it. But the only
Yeah.
thing that was permanently damaged was my labrum was basically just gone. At least the anterior one is. But that's a passive stabilizer and you don't really need it, especially for lifting where every other active stabilizer is actively being used. I mean, I suppose if someone's like blindsided me and yanked my arm, it's a bit weaker now, but that's not lifting. The greatest thing about lifting in regards to injuries, you have basically complete control over what happens to your body. Like you can choose the movement pattern, you choose the weight, you choose how the weight is impacting, you choose the forces. Like no other sport do you have that level of control over what's happening to your body. And when you're injured and you can only take so much, that's a really good thing to have in your back pocket. So I can choose to only lift 15 pounds with my recently dislocated shoulder. I can make sure that it's only in this square motion, which is most comfortable for that joint. It's not like these days I've been training jujitsu a little bit. I would not go to jujitsu with a dislocated shoulder because I can't control when someone tries to yank out my socket. I can tell them, "Hey, be nice to my shoulder." I trust a weight that in my hand a lot more than I trust a person, regardless of how good intentioned or how skilled they are.
Yeah, that's the one thing, I really like martial arts training as well, but that is the one thing that I'm always especially wary of. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
taking some wrestling lessons last year and I really enjoyed them a lot. Because I was preparing for recertification for my kettlebell skills, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's more like what I need for my profession versus this is a hobby and we're getting thrashed around and, slammed and all this other stuff. So it's like, just to be safe, maybe I'll hold
Mm-hmm.
off on this, like, for a little while. But I think you're absolutely right. It's like, I know a lot more people who get injured. Again, speaking of injuries, it's like, I know tons of people who are like, oh, I'm going to start doing jujitsu. I'm going to start doing this, that, and the other thing. But they're worried about getting hurt lifting. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you're worrying about the wrong thing. I think it's
Yeah.
far more likely that, some glad handling white belt is going to end up breaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's what they don't even fucking realize is that you want to know the best way to stay uninjured in jiu-jitsu. I mean, I'm obviously a very strong person in my gym. I have a buddy who's a very strong person in his gym, and we've both been asked multiple times, why are you like never tweaked or never injured? Why are you never like taken for fingers? Why is your like elbow never hurt? And I'm like, because in order to lift hundreds of pounds, your connective tissues have to get stronger.
Yeah.
So if you become really, really strong, obviously that helps just competitively, but it kind of bulletproofs your body a little bit. Like your tendons are stronger, your connective tissues are stronger. You're not going to be caught in like a fully extend arm bar as easily. And if you are, that's going to be a lot harder to damage those tissues. I mean, obviously it's not impossible. Like I definitely could get hurt in there and I have gotten stuff tweaked a little bit, but I'm much less concerned about my body being strong than I'm sure half the people there are because they do not have that connective tissue strength that I have developed through lifting really, really heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So they should not be concerned about getting hurt while lifting. They should be concerned about getting hurt when someone's trying to rip their arm out. Which I
Exactly.
think that should be straightforward, but for some reason people just assume that lifting is dangerous. And I don't even really know where that comes from. Obviously everyone says it, but I don't know where like that thought process comes from because like I said, it's something you control every aspect of. If you get hurt, it's either really bad luck or you messed up. And if you messed up, well, hopefully you learn from it.
Yeah.
And luckily, you have to start light because your body's not starting too heavy. So when you mess up when it's still light, the outcomes aren't usually that bad. Like you get some training wheels to work with until you get strong. And hopefully, during that process of becoming strong, you learn a thing or two about what not to do to not get hurt.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is. It's like people, especially now we're living in the age of like YouTube. People are like, "Oh yeah, I saw this video on YouTube, so I went and tried it, and then I got hurt." It's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, it's not the fault of the discipline of lifting, and it's not the fault of the exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you had no business, trying to load
Yeah.
up a barbell and like max out your bench press, in the gym when there was nobody else there, and you get like
Yeah.
buried on the bench. It's not really the bench press's fault, and it's I think more than anything, it's stuff like that. People think of exercise as some sort of like novelty, sort
Mm-hmm.
of like I can kind of tune out and just, basically just like go on like on automatic mode and everything will be fine. It's like
Mm-hmm.
not the way it works. It's not how you get strong either. Like you pointed out too. Like yeah, you can deadlift you can do all sorts of odd deadlifting variations, but because you're constantly focused on exactly what you're doing, the risk of
Mm-hmm.
injury is significantly lower as opposed to, an activity where there's somebody else involved like jujitsu or whatever the case may be. It's a heck of a lot higher. There's a lot less
Mm-hmm.
control that you actually have. Yeah,
Yes.
I think ultimately people just need to quit whining. They need to start lifting. And
That would be my general advice too. Like I have to constantly like take a step back and be like, okay, like obviously this all makes sense to you. You were kind of an expert, been doing this for 10 plus years. I try and give people a benefit of the doubt, but some people are, especially online, are just they're kind of beyond saving.
Well, the other thing is that they're if they don't have any skin in the game, like if they're not paying you
Mhm,
for your advice, they're not training with you in person. They're not like they're just asking questions, and it's all
mhm,
theory unless they're actually trying to apply it, and they're like running into a snag and then asking you, what should I do in this case? Well, okay, well that's a different story. Like
mhm.
how many of them are actually training consistently? How many of them have made any progress and have are asking something from like a practical standpoint as opposed to like what if, and they really have nothing to actually worry about because or they're worrying about the wrong things
Yeah,
because they're not doing
and
anything and except for sitting
and
around
that's
and getting bored.
honestly the thing. Like, if someone has these concerns and they frame it in the form of a question in a comment, I will explain to them. I will write a whole paragraph. I will redirect them to something I've already written. I will engage that in good faith, and I will explain everything I'm explaining here.
Mm-hmm.
But very, very few people take their impression and channel it that way. Instead, they just channel it into a throwaway comment, which is usually an attack, which is usually just blah 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 blah. Blah.
Yeah.
And granted, I mean, what do you expect from the internet? Because I feel like the people who are commenting on random Instagram posts, that's what they do. They're not, they probably don't have much else going on. They're probably not that bright. But like I said, if I understand that people are confused. I understand that people have these concerns. Like, that's totally valid. And if they approach it as, "Hey, I feel this way or I think this way," you're saying this is okay. Why is it okay? That's fine. I will teach them if they can. If they, after hearing everything, still say, "I don't think I agree with that," and I think you're wrong, but fine. Like, if you can approach it like an adult and have a conversation here, that's fine. It's just most people don't do that. And
Yeah.
honestly, I will fully commit, hold myself culpable to like taking those bad interactions with the majority and making it my default. Like, I do sometimes go out guns blazing to a comment they may be ambiguous, and they're like, "Hey, I was just trying to ask questions." Like, well, sorry, I read that in a totally different tone because I'm used to reading a certain kind of comment, and I feel bad about those, and I try and take a step back and approach it normally. But I don't know, it's just I probably shouldn't engage, but it's a guilty pleasure. Like I said, the red background.
You should engage. I saw a really good one you did yesterday. Somebody asked to work for you for free. And this was on your Insta story. He was
Oh
like,
yeah, the hidden DMs is always full. There's so much spam like that.
I know, man. It's like, well, I want to know what it just seems like a scam. Like I'm gonna like let me work for
Oh,
you.
it's 100% a scam. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, the first thing I thought is, I'm sure you've heard of Gary Vaynerchuk. He's like the Gary V. Like the serial entrepreneur dude. Maybe you haven't heard of him. He's
No.
like yeah, I remember this. Maybe he doesn't do it anymore, but he used to be like, if you really want to, work for yourself and you want to,
Mhm.
you know, let's say you have like digital services you offer like DM celebrities and offer to work for free for a certain amount of time to whatever, and I was like, that seems like a bad idea because they're under no obligation to pay you,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I don't get. Maybe these people are attempting to do something. One, I don't think this is like the legitimate source. Like, there's so many people that like. I have a very not serious approach to my social media. It just kind of works. I'm sure with some more thought, I could be pushing it harder. I could be slipping into the algorithm more. I could be monetizing it harder. But I really don't care about any of that. Like, I have a good day job. This is just a fun thing to do. I'm not trying to make it a career. I think that'd be a really silly career shift to try and go all in on social media influencing, because that is definitely not a stable career field.
not really.
But like, it's just a fun thing to do. Now that, I mean, people like it. People like companies are like, "Hey, you want to sponsor some of these things?" I'm like, "Oh, that's a good product. Yeah, I'll do that." Or, "You want to send you some stuff?" "Yeah, I'll take it." Like, it's all perks on top of just the fun I have of doing this stuff.
Certainly.
So I don't need someone to sit there and like optimize my social media presence or work. That's just in my mind a super silly thing.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think they can really do much,
Yeah, I think you're spot on there.
but they're
uh
fun to mess with.
Absolutely. No, I think that's the most important thing is that people will give you all sorts of, like nuggets that you can turn into endless
Mm-hmm.
entertainment. And it's not their intention, but we have the power to troll people into like entertaining us
Mm-hmm.
against their own will. And I think that's the best part of this era that we're living in, quite honestly. Social media is obviously a huge cesspool of idiots who leave dumb comments, but they're not without entertainment value. And if
Mm-hmm.
anything, you've proven that time and time again. So I
Yeah.
always look forward to seeing your responses to these things. Uh, Last couple of things. The Snap City Open. Tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. The Snap City Open is, I guess, it's a competition, and it was kind of like, well, there's so many competitions. There's obviously strongman powerlifting, all firm rules, and it would be 2 summers ago. So the third annual one is going on right now. It might be almost over by the time this drops, but if it's not done yet, and you're listening to this, and you're like, I like all this stuff. I'm gonna just go see if it's still open. Shoot your entry in. Even if you don't win, all the prizes I've got, with a few exceptions, are just going random giveaways because I want this to be something that everyone can feel like they can participate in, regardless of not they have the strength or skill to win. I want them to, chance to win prizes, have fun. That's really what it's all about. But anyways, a few years ago, it's like, okay, well, there's all these, competitions. There are online powerlifting competitions. There's some online strongman stuff. There's not a ton, or at least at the time there was Mikey's competition, which was that year, and then Zach Tellender also did the Eagle Olympics, which was a similar thing. I'm like, well, I want to do my version. I won those 2 competitions. Now it's my time to step back and be a promoter.
Yeah.
So I started the Snap City Open. It's just basically, it's a 3 events. So you have just like your powerlifting, except for it's got very vague rules. It's just like push, pull, and then this year it's skill. So very vague. There's no rules. Just submit something that you think is cool. Here are a few criteria that we will weight towards in the events of like a tie. And it's entirely subjective. There's no like quantification here. It's just send us your cool lift, send us your fun thing, send us your weird niche lift that you've been working on that no one else cares about. There's no competition will have this movement, but you want to do it because you like it. Well, show it to us, and we'll have our panel of judges look over it. We'll pick some winners, and we'll have a good time. That's really what it's all about. It's like a little part competition, but also more just kind of like a celebration of the community of people who like to have some fun with lifting and realize that yes, it can indeed be a spectacle, because that's almost how lifting started. Like people say that like in the age of social media is why people are doing these dumb lifting stunts. Well, it's like, no, literally 100+ years ago was the circus strongman who was fighting an elephant, or like lifting 5 people with his teeth, or having a car drive over him. Like this is not a new phenomenon. And back then people appreciate it for what it is. And some people these days do too, but
Yeah. About the only thing different is that it used to be done in front of a live audience, and now it's just,
now it's
broadcast.
an even bigger audience.
Yeah. Well, I think for the non-perpetually online people who don't know what Snap City is, can you explain like the phenomenon, or how the term came to be, so that people know
Okay,
exactly
so
why you named it?
Snap City is like, well, I got the little sign there.
There we go.
Welcome
Welcome
to
to
Snap
Snap
City.
City, baby.
So almost like not long after I had the Instagram account, like that is or at least was, it still kind of is, a common kind of reaction. It's just kind of like an overused comment, like, oh, you're going to go Snap City. The implication being you're going to snap your back or snap your arm. You're going to snap something, and you're going to be in Snap City. You're going to be injured, and it's a bad thing. So I'd see that comment a lot, because at least at that time it was a popular, just kind of spewed out comment, like, oh, welcome to Snap City. And it's like, okay, yeah, ha ha ha, you're very original, sir. So
Yes.
I decided, like, you know what? No, like, we're just not going to sit here and let them take this throwaway phrase and make it a bad thing. I'm going to reclaim it. Like, you think I'm going to Snap City? Well, yes, I am. But Snap City is the home of the strong, and I will gladly be the mayor.
Nice.
So this is my kind of attempt at reclamation of a kind of niche insult.
I like it. Speaking of insults, you have a great mocking term that you use for the people who complain. Tell us about
Oh,
this.
there's a bunch of them.
Well,
The biggest one is glassbacks, and honestly, I probably heard that in passing at some point, but I'm like, that I like the sound of that,
yeah.
so it's kind of semi-repopularized. I think there's someone that like 20 years ago that used it in his books or something, I've been told. But whatever, it's glassbacks, and that's just kind of self-explanatory. There are people who are overly afraid of the strength of their back and think it's going to be injured. There are worry weeks, which is a planned worry wart, and they're the people who are concerned because they see a thing and they're like, oh, that would cripple me, so it must cripple everyone. So those are worry weeks. Nostradamus are people, because there's always people like, oh, you're going to regret this in certain arbitrary amount of time in the
Yeah.
future, because obviously it's not hurting you now, but in the future, which I cannot prove at this time,
Yeah.
it will hurt you.
The vague prophet
The
Nostradamus.
vague prophet, because like I said, the injury is always going to be 5 years from now, or the time where I'm going to be this crippled is always 10 years from now. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure I would have been told that 10 years ago when I started lifting, if I'd done these things, and I'd still be here just fine. So it's going to always be bumped back 10 years. It's
Yeah.
tomorrow's always a day away kind of thing.
No, I noticed. I was gonna say I don't know if it's so much you, but the guy, I remember his Instagram handle, Atlas Power Shrugged.
Yep,
He
Atlas. Yeah.
Yeah, he's always going in, like all in on people who are like, I think in his opinion, maybe perhaps a little too conventional.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys thought about uh teaming up and having like the glass back open where you like you just volunteer people for the open and then you give them like kind of like a mocking prize. So it would be like so and so lifted
Mhm.
the weakest deadlift ever with the most perfect form ever. So
Mhm.
he's gonna get a teddy bear, or something like that. Like I think like a glass back open, that might be a good one as like a way to mock your detractors.
No. Me and Alice actually, we both were in Mikey's competition. I was first, he was second. We were both at the Eagle Olympics. I was first, he was second. And we've obviously like back and forth. We have a friendly thing going on. He definitely likes to go like on the attack sometimes, and I'd say maybe 75% of the time, like yeah, they probably deserve it. But I try to be. I don't like attack. I attack the ideas of people. I will
Yeah.
attack just like a vague representation. Like I will attack the concept of people who are afraid of lifting. But I just don't like to attack a specific person. Like I'm never. I don't think you have a very hard time finding me like going into someone else's random post, even if I disagree with them, and just attacking them
Yeah.
because I'm not about that. I think that people shouldn't do that. Like in general, like I don't think people should come into my neighborhood and shit on my yard. So I'm not going to do the same
Yeah.
to them. Even if I think they're wrong, I will definitely attack their idea. I will just post out Jones like, hey, weak people, don't be this way. I'm not going to say at so and so, you weak person, shame on you.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes if I get extra dumb comments, I might leave their Instagram name in the screenshot I put in the story. But that's as far as they'll go when it comes to
Yeah.
direct attack or shaming.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That's the kind of thing that I don't mind seeing from afar, but like I kind of feel bad like if I go all in on somebody. Some people are really good at it. Again, Atlas, he's turned it into an art form. Like I see his
Mm-hmm.
stuff and I'm like, I can't help but read. It's just sort of like
Mm-hmm.
it's this
I mean,
voyeuristic,
it's it's a guilty pleasure, but I realize at the same time it's kind of a toxic thing, and I try to be like, oh, it's a general attempt to push towards making a more positive world versus a more negative world, even if sometimes negativity is for a greater good. But it's just like, yeah, I know I tend that way like inherently, so I'm going to make active attempts not to do these things because it's not good for other people. It's not good for me inside.
yeah.
Like I said, coming from the Reddit background, I know all about just this having this spewing this bile, and it never leaves you feeling very good. So
No,
I
no.
try not to do that.
That's the
If I
thing.
catch myself falling into that pit, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna step away now.
There have been a couple times I've been on Twitter and I was like, you know, scrolling through, let's say, comments on something, and I was like, God damn it, I have to get off here now because
Mm-hmm.
like it's getting close to bedtime, and I'm like just getting riled up with how stupid some
Yeah,
people are. Yeah, it doesn't do you too
that's
much.
that's what social media pushes because that's what gets the most engagement. Is
Yeah,
people love to
exactly.
hate, whether they do it intentionally or they get sucked in. People love to hate, and all these websites just push that. They push controversy, they push arguments, and it's not good. It's I acknowledge that I'm part of it, but it's not good.
Yeah, that's why I generally try. I try to now. I'm not as big as you on social media, and
Mm-hmm.
certainly not as big as Atlas and the others. But similarly, I again I don't like the way I feel like if I attack someone directly. So I'm with you on that. I try to avoid it, but I at least I try to avoid creating it. But like I said,
Mm-hmm.
it's a real guilty pleasure to read it.
Yeah, sometimes you jump in, sometimes you catch yourself. It's like okay, like as a treat.
Exactly. I've been good all
Try
week.
not try not try to make it a full meal.
I've been exactly. I've been spreading positivity all week. It's time for my
Mm-hmm.
weekly dose of toxic
Or
negativity.
we're looking for an upward trend in positivity. It's not going to be straight up all the time. Gotta
Exactly.
build
It's
up,
like
a
there's
little bit better every day.
always little
Yeah,
dips, and yeah, that's the way God
we're
meant
we're
it.
all we're all human. We're not perfect.
Exactly. Now, final two things before we leave.
Mm-hmm.
If I recall correctly, I think you were putting together a document that kind of outlines your general training philosophy and approach. Is that going to be available for purchase? And if so, where would people go to get it?
I I think at one point I was considering. I intended to write a very large piece, like a what I've learned in 10 years. That ended up being a too big of a thing, and I never really finished it. But I do have an extensive library of individual topics, which if you take them all together, you'll probably get a pretty good idea. Those are all available for either. I have the Snap City Drive, which I kind of wish there was a better way to kind of show. I think a lot of people come for the fun videos, but everything I write, I post them on Instagram. They're kind of in slideshow format, which is not a good way to eat them, I know. But they're all available as documents on the Google Drive. There's literally probably 40 short-ish papers, maybe 10 long ones, two programs. So lots of good actual information for anyone who's willing to go and read it, which I know is not the main draw, but I put out because I want people to know these things, and it's all totally free. Like I have a pretty firm line of I do not charge for lifting advice, period, because one, I want to be 100% clear that I do not have any financial stake or like ulterior motive in like making you think a certain way. I am just telling you what I think is the best way to lift.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people like be able to take that at face value and not question like, is he just saying this to be different so I will pay him, or any kind of thought process like that. So all the things seem free, programs are free. They're available on the Boost Camp app. There is a place to like leave a tip on those. They're free programs, so you can leave a tip. All the money I get from Boost Camp, I do just donate because again, I want zero financial thing for anything training related. Other stuff, fine. I want to sell t-shirts, fine. I want to sell gym equipment, fine. Training advice, because that's not like a physical object. That is like essentially you're selling a promise that it'll work. No, absolutely free. I get nothing from that. And I'll be really, really clear about that.
Sure.
But yeah, lots of stuff available. I just released or am in the process of releasing Meat Hook, which is essentially a general program that's kind of structured after how I train these days. Obviously, I'm kind of just all over the place because I kind of play by ear, but I took my general training ideas, kind of like a rough outline of my week and some of my favorite like progression schemes for strength, and turned it into a more concrete program. That is available as a spreadsheet now. It should be up on the Boost Camp app in maybe a week. So by the time this drops, it should be up. So that should
Nice.
definitely be a good program. I have Rip and Tear, which is a bench squat deadlift focus program for people who aren't power lifters. They don't train squat bench and bench really hard all the time, but they still want to like set PRs and they want to like focus on it for a block. That's what it's designed for. And it's gotten lots of really good reviews, which always makes me really happy. So
Of course. Is Rip and Tear based off the Doom song?
yes, both programs are now named after songs off the Doom soundtrack. They also have Flesh and Metal, which is kind of like a loose training template, which isn't really a full program, but that's also a Doom song.
Nice, dude. Nice. And where can people follow you on Instagram for the deadliest lifts of all time, in addition
It's
to the
at
various comments with glass backs and things like that?
that's at Deadliest Lift, like I'm sure you'll recognize when you see it.
Yes.
Also at Deadliest Lift on YouTube and TikTok, but that's basically just reposting the same video. So if you don't have Instagram, you want to follow one of those, great. But if you already follow Instagram, there's nothing to gain by following those two. I don't care about those two as much. So if you want to follow all three, go nuts. It's just you don't have to.
Yeah. Folks, follow at least one of them. Do yourself a favor. If for no other reason, it'll give you the inspiration you need to realize that you can always be doing so much more and being so much more. And all you got to do is walk a path somewhat less taken. And odds are you're going to end up in some pretty cool places. So, Mark, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And, folks, as always, have fun and happy training.